And the decisions I think we make now are going to determine the course of our future for the next 5 or 6 decades. And I truly believe the infrastructure we're building and the investments we're making through PGI are going to help set that course in a fundamentally stronger path than otherwise would be the case. Just look at the progress we've made over the last year. The Lobito corridor in sub-Saharan Africa. We mobilized $3 billion for clean energy projects, which will bring clean electricity to 1.5 million families that had no access to it before. We've broken ground on a new data center in Ghana and announced another in Kenya. We're laying fiber optic cables to support secure and affordable and reliable connectivity. And we're developing the first railway line to extend from Angola, the DRC, Zambia, to the Indian Ocean. I think this is a game changer. I really do. The economy's going to have over 2 billion people very shortly. And it really is a game changer. We're already seeing goods that normally take up to 45 days to transport, now taking only 40 to 40 hours. And think of the how transformative this is for trade, agribusiness, farming, food security as a whole. I want to thank the Prime Minister, Maloney, for partnering with us in the EU on this project. I also want to thank President Kishida, Prime Minister Kishida, I should say. I just demoted him. In April, we both came together with President Marcos to launch the Luzon Economic Corridor in the Philippines. It's happened in the Pacific as well. And already we mobilized capital for sectors that are critical to our future. Clean energy, agriculture, semiconductors, and so much more. All told, I'm proud to announce the United States has mobilized more than $60 billion in investments around the world thus far. That's double where we were last year. Now we've still got a long way to go to close the infrastructure gap that holds too many countries back. But together, I think we're showing democracies can deliver. This is an important moment to be able to do that. And when you focus on people, transparency, and high standards, on quality and sustainability, it doesn't inhibit investment, it attracts investment. I got criticized at home for asking whether the federal government invests in something that discourage or encourage private sector to invest. 96% of people ask that encourages investment, not discourages investment. It attracts investment. And people around this table are proof of that, I would argue. That includes Mr. Fink. I call you Larry, I'm calling you Mr. Fink. We go back a long way at BlackRock and Mr. Nadella from Microsoft, an outfit that we know well. Today, BlackRock and other partners are committing to invest at least $4 billion toward infrastructure projects that align with our PGI priorities. And Microsoft recently announced $5 billion investment into digital infrastructure, including $1 billion for a data center in Kenya. That's a really big deal. This is because the G7 and our partners created opportunities for sound investments in infrastructure. And we mobilized our own capital and created efficient ways to de-risk projects so the private sector could get on board more easily. And you are getting on board, not just U.S. companies. So let me close with this. During the G7 summit, we're addressing a range of issues: clean energy, economic development, global security, food security, orderly migration, digital connectivity, and infrastructure is central to our progress across all these challenges, every one of them. I remember when I introduced the infrastructure bill at home, they said we couldn't get it done. It was only $1.3 trillion and we got it passed. And it's really having an impact on development home, but this is bigger than that in a sense. We're talking about the world. So today, we began PGI's 3rd year, and I would strongly hope we can keep up the momentum. Let's keep finding opportunities to invest in quality physical, digital, and energy infrastructure. Let's keep partnering with each other, in the private sector, with the World Bank, with countries around the world, to mobilize even more capital. To go from billions, we have to get to the trillions that are needed. And that's what's going to be needed to close this infrastructure gap. And at this inflection point, let's keep forging a better future together, because I'm confident we can do it. I know I get accused of being overly optimistic, but I am confident this could be a significant breakthrough. And I thank you again for your partnership and leadership. And with that, George, I turn it back to you.
Thank you very much, Joe. Now I give the floor to the Prime Minister of Japan, Fumio Kishida. Fumio.
はい、皆さんこんにちは、PGII に関するこのイベントの開催に際し、メローニ首相とバイデン大統領のリーダーシップに敬意を表します。アフリカをテーマとしたこのイベントは、まさに時期を得たものだと思います。我が国は約30年前に TICAD を立ち上げ、近年は FOIP 協力も推進しつつ、アフリカに寄り添い、そしてアフリカ自らが主導する成長を後押ししてきました。その中で、中原回路をはじめとする広域開発にも注力してきました。PGII の下で現在進んでいるロビト回廊開発とともに、アフリカ南部地域の東西で連結性を向上させ、投資環境を改善し、新たな成長の起爆剤となると考えています。また、先ほどバイデン大統領にも紹介していただきましたように、本年4月には、米国とともに PGII の下でフィリピンにおけるルソン経済回廊を発表しました。PGII の取り組みはアフリカを越え、アジアにも広がっています。我が国はアフリカを含む全世界において5年間で650億ドル以上のインフラ支援と民間資金の動員を表明しています。また来年夏、アフリカ各国の首脳を日本にお招きし、TICAD9 を開催します。G7 と PGII の成果を TICAD にもつなげ、質の高いインフラの力を持って、引き続きアフリカの成長を力強く後押ししてまいります。
Thank you very much, Fumio. We now have some intervention from top representatives of leading Italian and American companies. The private sector plays a leading role in the PGII, and so I'm happy to have you here. I give the floor immediately to the CEO of INI, Claudia Descalzi, reminding everyone that we are very late. Thank you.
Normally I'm very low, so that's reason. So let me sincerely thank the Italian Prime Minister and the US President for this opportunity to speak about the effort to foster African socio-economic growth to the lens of the Mattei Plan and in connection with the PGII. The recent European energy crisis has renewed the interest around Africa, but Western companies have already been present in this continent for a long time. Energy has almost always been the reason, with hundreds of billion invested, without being able to generate an organic and structured development of the continent. This situation requires a paradigm shift with respect to what has been done in the past. Before investing and looking for commodities for our energy security, we must adopt a political vision capable of closing the gap, enabling Africa to become a partner, laying an equal footing. It will not be an easy task. After more than a century of ineffective presence, we must regain credibility, not imposing our culture and investing only for our energy security, but expressing real interest for local needs and, above all, taking risks with and for them. For example, talking about sharing risks, more than 80% of the gas that Eni has produced in Africa in the last decade has been destined to the African nations to improve energy access, instead of exporting it in a more secure and profitable way. This approach created a different relationship based on mutual trust, allowing us during the energy crisis due to the Russian invasion of Ukraine to quickly find gas available for Italy energy security without reducing the quantities given to the local market. Another example is our agri-feedstock initiative, which was referred to by Italian Prime Minister and planned to be scaled up by the Mattei Plan. In several African nations, we produce vegetable oil for our biorefineries to decarbonize transport sector, generating jobs for 1 million farmers by 2030, and developing a long-lasting agriculture sector. In the last 10 years, Eni has invested in African countries in economic diversification, agriculture, education, healthcare, water access, sanitation, and clean cooking. The effort of a private companies alone without a convergent and structural political will is unlikely to bring sustainable results. The Mattei Plan calls for a shared action among Africa, G7 members and other involved stakeholders in the context of the PGII. This means working together with the same purpose and for the long term. This will change the situation for Africa and also for the entire world. I really think that Africa's future will determine our own future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claudio. Now I would give the floor to the CEO of Enel, Flavio Cattaneo. Please.
Thank you. Good evening to everybody. It's an honor to be here with you today. Let me introduce the Enel Group in a very nutshell in order to respect the 3 minutes speaking time. Enel is the world's largest private operator in renewable energy and the distribution sector with an international footprint. Indeed, we are present in 28 countries and 5 continents. This year we have reached 82% of our production emission-free. This is important because it is a signal towards our way is directed. Enel is also part of the steering committee of Mattei Plan, the Italian government initiative focused on Africa, with synergies with the Partnership for Global Infrastructures and Investment, and with the EU Global Gateway, where Enel actively participates. In Morocco, South Africa, and Zambia, we have already invested about 2.5 billion in the renewable sector. We have also a pipeline of projects at different stages in other countries, such as Kenya, and we are looking for other sustainable opportunities through governmental missions. For us, Africa represents an opportunity. I want to explain better. It is an opportunity because Africa has a higher potential for renewable generation compared to Europe, given its abundance of renewable sources. Furthermore, the development of technology can help to increase the productivity of plants and consequently to reduce the price of power. This could open up for Africa the opportunity to export clean energy to Europe through a submarine cable between Tunisia and Italy, helping Africa to reduce its dependency for other countries. And at the same time, Europe could benefit from a decrease in energy prices and a diversification in suppliers. And Mattei Plan is exactly going in this direction. Of course, to transform the potential into a concrete opportunity, the right condition must be put in place. We also believe that Africa could be an attractive labor pool. But nowadays we are facing some issues related to the lack of local specialized labor. For this reason, we have created in Morocco a Pan-Africa Center for Renewable Energy Training, and through the Rest for Africa Foundation, of which Enel is the main funding member, we support training programs and initiatives. We have also working on innovative projects such as a pilot one for the production of green hydrogen in Tunisia in partnership with Eni. I'd like to conclude saying that the presence of Enel and other big companies able to give their contribution to Africa, also creating local specialized expertise, will help to create true partnership with African nations. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Flavio. Now I want to welcome and give the floor to the CEO of Microsoft, Nardella, please.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister Maloney and President Biden, for the opportunity this afternoon to really participate in this very important discussion about scaling partnership for global infrastructure and investments to support very high-quality infrastructure financing in low- and middle-income countries. It's encouraging to see the partnerships continue to expand and gain momentum. As this partnership is recognized, we are entering a very new age driven by AI, which has made clear the critical importance of both digital infrastructure, connectivity in every sector of the economy, in every corner of the world, as well as energy. There's no doubt that AI is amongst the most transformative technologies of our time, and we believe it will fundamentally bend the productivity curve for every individual organization and industry sector, and help us address some of our most pressing global challenges, including in the world's low and middle-income countries. At Microsoft, we have this saying where we say that we only succeed if the world around us is fundamentally succeeding. Therefore, we are very, very focused on ensuring that every country can benefit from this broad technological shift while mitigating its risks. This presents a pretty unique opportunity to help address the economic development and societal priorities everywhere in the world, whether it's small businesses becoming more productive, whether it's the multinationals in every part of the world becoming more competitive globally, governments becoming more efficient, improving health outcomes and education outcomes. Over the past 3 months, for example, we have invested $5 billion in cloud and AI infrastructure in Indonesia, in Malaysia, in Thailand, as well as in Kenya, together with our partners G42 and the UAE. And this is work designed to drive that broad spectrum economic growth, innovation, and connectivity to driving productivity. But we recognize that this requires more than just infrastructure, which is why we have also launched initiatives to provide the broad-based AI skilling opportunities, strengthen cybersecurity, and support startups and innovative companies around the world. And we already see many examples of this impact in action. I was in Indonesia recently, and I saw how Indonesian farmers are improving their yields, to Kenyan street vendors who now have access to credit for the first time. We also know infrastructure of the future has to be sustainable. This is why we're investing in all the carbon-free energy, as well as efforts to develop greener steel and concrete to build our data centers and also make our silicon more carbon-free and efficient. At the same time, this ambition is not something that any one company, or for that matter, any one country can accomplish on its own, and it requires broad partnerships across private and public sectors. For example, we need regulatory innovation to enable multiple countries to share digital infrastructure when located in neighboring regions. That's why what we did in Kenya, where we created a trusted data zone for all of the East African community in partnership with the government and G42. It ensures governments and companies across the region can store their data in our data center with assurance that their own privacy, cybersecurity, and other legal rules and protections will continue to be applied. This is just one example of the type of partnership and innovation in regulatory environment that is required in order to be able to really drive this next generation of infrastructure. To close, I'm incredibly optimistic about our collective opportunity, and I'm looking forward to working together to help people and organizations around the world to apply this new generation of technology to grow and thrive. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. Now I will give the floor to the CEO of BlackRock, Fink.
Prime Minister Maloney, President Biden, Your Excellencies, thank you. I'm honored to participate here today about a conversation on the partnership on global infrastructure. Last November, BlackRock had a chance to offer some thoughts about how the G7 and the multinational multilateral development banks could unlock more private capital for infrastructure in the emerging world. The IMF and the World Bank were created 80 years ago when banks, not markets, financed most things. Today, the financial world is flipped. The capital markets are the biggest source of private sector financing, and unlocking that money requires a different approach than the bank balance sheet model of yesterday. There's still a lot of work to be done, but reform over the past 8 months have resulted in billions of dollars of new dollars for the developing countries' infrastructure. That's what you saw last week with the announcement of the Investor Coalition. BlackRock, GIP, KKR, and other major firms will deploy $25 billion in Asia's emerging economies. In a way, it's an Indo-Pacific counterpoint to Italy's Mattei plan, which is helping African economies grow, and that's important. Every country in the world needs a growth strategy. But if I could convey one more important message today, it would be the countries that need growth most right now are not just emerging economies. Great economic powers, including the G7, are in fact on the list and need growth going forward. All of us are staring down a growth dilemma. Whether we solve it or not, it's a significant economic fork in the road for our countries. Today, the G7 average debt to GDP is 129%. No matter how much we tax, how much we cut or reduce that debt, it will not be enough. The only way we can achieve this future of growth is by truly growing out of it. But just growth is becoming more important because we need to be focusing on our fiscal health. It is also becoming much more difficult to achieve. Within 25 years, most of the G7 countries will be on demographic downslope. Working age population will decline. The ceiling on growth will get lower and lower. This is why building new infrastructure is critical, especially through public-private partnerships. Infrastructure investments is a counterforce to the high-debt, low-growth economies. It does the opposite. It catalyzes growth without necessarily adding to public debt. This is true for every kind of infrastructure, from airports to data centers, and importantly, in the future, AI. With AI, the infrastructure is actually a double catalyst. The electricity demand from data centers is causing the U.S. energy sector to grow after 15 years of stagnation. AI also will make people more efficient, meaning our smaller future workforce can still become more productive than the larger current workforce. Building this infrastructure for growth will require something from us. It will require pragmatism. We'll need pragmatism in financing. Some of the new data centers require 1 gigawatt of power. At BlackRock, we estimate the infrastructure alone, this is before chips, could be as much as $10 to $12 billion per project. Between now and 2040, the world will need to spend $75 trillion repairing old and building new infrastructure. Asking taxpayers to shoulder the $75 trillion of new debt is not something countries can fiscally or fairly do for our future. Instead, there is a huge, vast pool of private capital. We need pragmatism in policy, specifically permitting, especially at the G7 level. When President Biden signed the Inflation Reduction Act 2 years ago, the law's clean energy infrastructure was projected to reduce 710 million metric tons of carbon emissions by 2030. But if permitting delays continue, the new production may only be under 500. And this is a lesson for all of us. We need to be focusing on the pragmatism of permitting to move forward. And we need pragmatism for energy. Much of the new infrastructure being built is for renewables. BlackRock recently invested in Africa's largest wind farm near Lake Turkana in Kenya. It is now supplying about 12% of Kenya's electricity. But without advances in storage, wind, and solar, we are not going to be able to provide constant, reliable flow of electricity. The world can't function without that. So with data centers at the bedrock of a digital economy, and I've seen more than half of the electricity may have to come from dispatchable sources like nuclear, natural gas, or hydro. Otherwise, data centers will not be complete with just wind and solar. The world has many challenges, but my gosh, I am more optimistic than ever we're going to be able to achieve them. We have to talk about them, and we have to be pragmatic. And I'm here to just talk about that logic. We need to be growing by building infrastructure. We can build infrastructure by unlocking private investments. We can unlock private investments by being pragmatic about permitting and energy policies. And I can promise you, we will be your partner. So thank you.
Thank you much. Now
I'm just saying we need you.
we need you. Now I'll give the floor to the CEO of Cassa Depositi e Prestiti, Dario Scannapiego. Dario.
Many thanks, Prime Minister. It's really an honor to be here and represent Cassa Depositi e Prestiti. Africa's population, the youngest globally, is projected to grow by 70% and reach 2.5 billion by 2050. At present, local job creation cannot keep pace with the rising workforce, while security and climate challenges are contributing to ever-increasing displacement both within and outside the continent. Still, Africa remains a continent of unexploited potential growth and opportunities. In this context, promoting long-term partnerships that are based on equal footing and are fully committed to local needs represents to us the only way to support African countries. And this was exactly the spirit of Enrico Mattei, the founder of ENI, who has inspired the new Mattei Plan for Africa by the Italian government. Now, the investment needed to tackle climate and social challenges in Africa require a systemic approach through a combination of three elements. First, public resources to provide risk mitigation and technical support, which are crucial elements to prepare bankable projects. Then financial contribution and on-the-ground knowledge by multilateral and bilateral development finance institutions to create an enabling environment for investment and really a greater and deeper involvement of the private sector. We also need to coordinate and cooperate more openly among the FIs and with local promoters to build and share, pragmatically, I would say, concrete project pipelines. And it is also key to support the development of sound local financial systems. Cassa Depositi e Prestiti is rapidly increasing its operation in developing countries. We have been doing so thanks to our considerable firepower and a diversified toolbox. We have around 10 billion euro of public resources that we manage in this area, including one of the biggest European instruments for climate finance, which is the 4.4 billion Italian Climate Fund. And our main focus is Africa, with the aim, again, of supporting the Mattei Plan. We are currently reinforcing our cooperation with local partners, such as the African Development Bank, with whom we are structuring 4 flagship initiatives that will mobilize up to 500 million euro from the Italian cooperation system, promoting high-impact projects in Africa. And I thank President Adesina for the wonderful cooperation. In the context of the Italian G7 presidency, Cassa Depositi e Prestiti has also been collaborating with peer institutions to support the Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investments. We are chairing the expert group tasked with developing solutions for a more effective mobilization of PGII investments, particularly in Africa, and with defining a pipeline of projects in which G7 DFIs can potentially invest together. In the coming month, our expert group will deliver the 2024 joint action proposal, which will focus on country-based programs. In the meantime, we have been working to support the existing PGII flagship initiatives, amongst them, as mentioned by Prime Minister Meloni, the Lobito Infrastructure Corridor, where the Italian intervention aims at providing both equity and debt financing to the main sponsors and lenders of the project for a total amount of around $320 million, and this is also in cooperation with SACE. To conclude, Cassa Depositi e Prestiti feels a profound responsibility. As a development finance institution, we know that our role in fostering investments in developing countries in cooperation with our peers can make the difference. As Italians, we feel it's our duty, for historical and cultural reasons, to work hand in hand with partners in the Global South for common prosperity. Many thanks.
Thank you very much, Dario. Now, the CEO of SACE, Ricci, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Prime Minister, thank you, Mr. President. What I would like to say is how SACE can promote and support the global infrastructure investment in Africa together with the Piano Mattei. We would like to start from saying that, talking about Africa, what we have done in the past. So far, we have supported 30 billion of projects in Africa. And from the inception of the Piano Mattei, we have increased by supporting 5 billion projects in Africa. So in the latest 18 months, we have supported 5 billion projects in Africa. And we are other pipeline we are following for the time being. But let me say, how do we do that? We have started by being local, because if you are not local, you cannot support projects in Africa. And we have opened so far 3 branches. One is in Johannesburg, one is in Nairobi through our participation in the African Trade Insurance Company, and the other one is in Cairo, and we are about to open a 4th in Rabat in Morocco. And we are working together with all the institutions, with Cassa Depositi e Prestiti, all the other financial institutions to support other projects. For the time being, we are working on the Lobito project, Darius Canapielco has said, and on other transactions whereby we are trying on one side to put in contact Italian companies with local companies, because for us it's very important that there is a development just in case there is a development of the local society. Finally, I wish to say that based also on our experience in terms of supporting infrastructure projects, that's to mention some of the projects we have so far supported. We have supported, for example, hospitals, we have supported smart cities, we have supported hydro projects. We wish to say that we want to give and to support and use our capabilities to foster more the development of Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like now to give the floor to the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. Ursula, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, dear Georgia, Prime Minister Meloni and President Biden. So I recall very well that it has been 2 years since we started this initiative, and it was in the wake of the pandemic. It was at a time where we had the energy crisis because of the war of aggression of Russia in Ukraine, and we had a food crisis. And this was the time where we joined forces and said we need a major investment program for infrastructure abroad. PGII was born. The European Union is contributing 300 billion through Global Gateway, and it's fantastic that we have the Mattei plan now also joining. We wanted to create an alternative for this infrastructure investment. And it is not only the financial firepower that is impressive, but PGI is sustainable. It's good for the planet, but it's also good for the country's finances, if I may say so. And this combination makes our offer different to others. Important is that we want to bring long-lasting benefits to the local economy of our partners. And of course, we need the strength of the private sector. And therefore, it's wonderful that you are here tonight. The PGII is designed to support basically your global investments. And at the same time, of course, we rely a lot on you and your knowledge and your expertise. You are pioneering the technologies of the future, we just heard it. You are pioneering the energy of the future, if I look at the clean hydrogen, for example, or at the topic of climate resilient agriculture, and I could go on and on and on. What I also think is very important, you have a vast know-how how to train the local workforce and also how to step up new industries in other continents. So we, of course, have our part to do too, for example, to create the legal framework that is necessary. And Larry Fink, I heard you on speed and permitting. Indeed, it was exactly in that crisis that we increased drastically the speed of permitting, for example, for renewables in the European Union. So we should copycat that when we are in projects, for example, in Africa, that we make sure that the legal framework is conducive and it helps you to speed up because, yes, we know how important that is. Our part is also to invest in education for the local workforce, be it vocational training, be it schools or universities. So it's a fantastic mixture. And this makes our partnership unique. PGI means top quality from our companies. it means transparency of our investments, and it means trust between equal partners. So thank you very much for having you here tonight.
Thank you, Ursula. Please, the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau.
Thank you, Georgia, and thank you to President Biden for bringing us together. It's also great to see other leaders, including global business leaders like my old friends Satya and Larry. Good to see you guys again. 2 years ago in Germany, as Ursula pointed out, we made a bold commitment. Together, government and business alike, we pledged to mobilize $600 billion to meet the demand of infrastructure financing in low and middle income countries. And we pledged to do so in a way that prioritized environmental standards, the green transition, strong labor, and gender equality for everyone. This work is about fostering the kind of stability and prosperity that has benefits for us all. We've made important progress together already. Last year at the G7 in Hiroshima, Canada announced $335 million for infrastructure initiatives focused on combating the climate crisis and building climate resilience. And we also committed $750 million through FinDev Canada, our development finance institution, to expand their global efforts to meet demand for infrastructure and to promote sustainable and inclusive development. But of course, there's so much more to be done. Canada will continue to leverage the expertise of our private sector and invest in growth that benefits everyone. To build on our progress, we'll deliver an additional $720 million to FinDev Canada for its new concessional finance facility to provide low-interest financing for sustainable development in Latin America, the Caribbean, the Indo-Pacific, and of course, Africa. We're doing this to lower the risks for private sector partners and ensure they're able to put their capital to work in priority markets to solve today's big challenges. We're also providing almost $127 million in loans and grants to support an equitable energy transition, specifically in South Africa. Like Italy's ambitious Mattei Plan for Africa, these initiatives support Africa's clean energy initiatives. On top of that, we're providing $510 million to the Inter-American Development Bank's Net Zero and Climate Resilience Accelerator Fund. This funding will support the development of new technologies and business models. It'll also help communities throughout Latin America and the Caribbean adapt to the effects of climate change. And finally, we're providing $45 million to the Private Insurance Development Group, which provides financing for sustainable infrastructure in African and Asian countries. There is, of course, lots more to do, but Canada will be there as a partner as we invest together to build a better world for everyone. Merci beaucoup, mes amis.
Thank you very much, Justin. I want to welcome also the presence of some multilateral development banks. So I would like to give the floor to the president of the World Bank, Banga.
Thank you very much. We're here, I hope I'm not making you speechless, but we're here discussing jobs for Africa and economic development. So I'm going to talk about two things. The first is the strategy the bank is pursuing on creating jobs in Africa. There are 5 pillars. The first pillar is electricity. 600 million Africans do not have electricity. We have committed to connect 300 million by 2030, 250 with us, 50 with my partner, Akin. That is going to cost $30 billion from IDA as well as the private sector. Second, infrastructure. Africa is a very poor participator in trade. The principal reason is it's impossible to move things around, and their value-added infrastructure is very poor. We're very focused on building rails, roads, bridges, agricultural warehouses. Third, healthcare. Not only for the people of Africa, but the jobs it will create in providing the healthcare. We're going to connect 1.5 billion people around the world, of which about 700 million will be in Africa, to primary healthcare with Japan's help by 2030. Fourth, agribusiness. Africa can produce food for the world. Africa has water, but Africa has no irrigation. 6% of Africa is irrigated, 37% of Asia is irrigated. Africa has much less fertilizer use, 1/3 the output per acre than other areas. We can change that. It's possible to do so with focus. And finally, tourism. Those 5 areas are all focused on jobs. 450 million Africans will come eligible for jobs by 2030. Currently, Africa is on a pathway to generate 125 million jobs. Forecasts are not destiny. We can change it, and the idea is to make a difference. Second is the private sector. We've created a private sector lab. Larry is a part of that lab. We have many recommendations, but the two that matter today. The first one has to do with regulatory policy, and Larry talked about pragmatism. In the case of electricity in Africa, the first thing we're doing is 10 countries. We're making a list of which regulatory policy needs to change to enable the private sector to feel confident that their money is best invested in that country as compared to another one. That work is beginning. Second is the issue of guarantees. The private sector wanted de-risking. We have launched a guarantee platform on the 1st of July. It will treble the volume of guarantees that the World Bank offers. That's the two tangible things we're on. So 300 billion people connected to electricity between us, 30 billion of investment there, private sector enablement. Those are the two big tasks we're into. That's why I'm happy to be here. I think PGII, I think the Gateway, I think the Mateo Plan, and I think RISE, which didn't get mentioned, but RISE is critical to change the use of minerals out of Africa, not as a mineral to be exported, but as value-added manufacturing on the ground in Africa. Again, something we're exporting. So thank you for the opportunity. I'm glad to have a chance to do this job. I told you earlier, I wake up every morning. It's a privilege to be a part of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Banga. Now the President of the African Development Bank, Adesina, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister Meloni, President Biden, my dear brother and friend, Prime Minister Trudeau, Prime Minister Kishida, Your Excellencies. I wish to first and foremost thank you for inviting me to this G7 summit. And as I sit around here at this table, I am the happiest man around here because you're talking about Africa. And so I'm like, bring it on. President Biden just told Larry, we need you. So I need all of you. So I'm kind of really excited about that. Well, that's because Africa's infrastructure gap is significant. It's $68 to $108 billion a year. The African Development Bank is the largest financier of infrastructure in Africa outside of China. We invested more than $50 billion in infrastructure that goes into rail, ports, airports, digital infrastructure, and the list goes on. We supported the Nakala corridor and the Berea corridor that the Prime Minister Kishida was talking about, but also what Larry was talking about in Kenya, the Turkana Lake Turkana project. The Kasungila Bridge today that links Zambia, Botswana, and Namibia was funded by the bank. We funded with $1 billion the 1,100-kilometer road that links Ethiopia all the way to Nairobi or to Mombasa. And that has increased trade between both countries by 400%. That's the power of infrastructure. And I think that's why I really applaud what the G7 is doing, both President Biden, Prime Minister Meloni, with your work on the Mateo Plan for Africa and the PGII that President Biden has been leading us on. We are also partnering with the U.S. Amos is over there, President Biden. I work very closely with him on the corridor, which is Lobito Corridor, Angola, Zambia, and DRC. We're going to put in $500 million on the Zambia part to make that corridor work. We are also financing that corridor, which is Tanzania, DRC, to Burundi, which is $3.2 billion for rail corridor that we are supporting. And we have several other things. But I think the issue is how do we get bankable projects? Because the lack of enough bankable projects is often the limiting factor. We have an infrastructure project preparation facility, which is called NEPAD, Project Infrastructure Preparation Facility. It's $126 million, but guess what? We use it to mobilize more than $26 billion downstream of investments. So you're talking of a ratio of 1 to 200. So that kind of facility is very much needed. I also want to thank the G7 for your support for the Alliance for Green Infrastructure in Africa. Thank you, Prime Minister Meloni. Thank you for putting that at the top of the agenda in the ministerial and the Central Bank's meeting. But also thank all of the G7 for your contribution of $150 million towards that, because AGIA will help us on net zero transition. And I want to particularly also thank my brother Dario Pierco of CDP for your great work and support for us on AGIA. Let me also say that risk, I think Larry was very right, and so is also Ajay. Risk is very important. So we deploy a whole series of instruments, partial risk guarantees, partial credit guarantees. And so we, just like Ajay was saying, we put all that together to form an Africa guarantee platform that will deal with project risk, market risk, financial risk, and also political risk, which is very important, so we can actually de-risk infrastructure. I also want to just close by saying that we have something called the Africa Investment Forum. It's a platform we put together 5 years ago. When people talk about Africa, they say, well, there are no bankable projects, nobody's going to finance it. It's not correct. We put it together, and in 5 years, we've been able to mobilize more than $180 billion of investment interest to Africa in various parts of infrastructure. So we do know that Africa is not as risky as people say. In fact, Moody's Analytics did a 14-year accumulated study, and they found that in terms of default rate on infrastructure, Africa has the lowest 1.9%. Compared to the rest of the world. So it's not as risky as that. So being around this table, I like anything Baobab. I'm very happy to be surrounded by a lot of leaders and also a lot of people who want to put money into Africa. I am the happiest person here today, and thank you for making my day a great day. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, President Adesina. And now the Chancellor Scholz came just in time, so the floor is yours.
This is how our industry works. Thank you for convening us on the G7 Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment. And let me congratulate Georgia on the Mattei Plan, which is a very promising initiative and will no doubt generate positive outcomes. When we launched PGII at the Elmo G7 Summit 2 years ago, we pledged to make our partners from the Global South a better offer on their infrastructure needs, and to within 5 years, mobilize $600 billion in public and private investment to this end. We have to deliver. I think this is the promise, and we will stick to that. Let me highlight 3 points. Firstly, I very much welcome that as G7 we are stepping up our coordination to deliver on our common goal of fostering high-quality global infrastructure. This is an important step and a sign of our collective determination. And secondly, Germany is delivering on the economic corridors we have announced last year. Concretely, together with the German private sector, we are investing more than €1 billion along the Lobito corridor. This corridor will better link Central Africa to G7 markets and boost the cooperation between the G7 and the African continent. And thirdly, my key takeaway from the G20 Compact with Africa conference in Berlin last year is that African leaders are calling for a closer energy cooperation. Germany stands ready as a partner. This is why I'm particularly happy to announce that Germany is joining forces with Namibia in the field of renewable energy and green hydrogen. Germany supports the production of green hydrogen in Namibia at large scale by using foreign trade promotion instruments. This way, we are aiming to support the mobilization of a multi-billion euro private investment project. Together with the German private sector and our Namibian partners, we are setting up the biggest hydrogen projects in sub-Saharan Africa. In addition, Germany will support the development of a green hydrogen and renewable energy industry in Namibia with at least €100 million of direct public support. In Elmo, we made a strong pledge on global infrastructure. Today, I can declare that we are delivering. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Olaf, and thank you all for this very important moment that we had in the Italian Leaders Summit, the presidency of the G7. I think it was very precious to have you all here. For what came out in this important moment were basically 2 things. The first one is that all of us, we understand that Africa is not looking for charity. They ask for the possibility to compete on an equal footing. And you cannot do that if you don't have infrastructures. So we understand it, and we know it is the priority we have to work on. The second thing we understand is that the governments cannot do it alone. The private sector cannot do it alone. The multilateral development banks cannot do it alone, but we can do it all together. So it's very important that we show with this event that we want to transform our commitments in building blocks. So we want to be concrete. Thank you very much for this meeting, and thank you very much for the work we will do together. And good evening.